Welcome. So good to be with you on this Wednesday as we get together for a little midweek Bible study and devotional time. And I'm so glad that you've chosen to take some time out of your day, out of your week, to join us today to do just that. It's always good, as I say. I think I say this just about every week, but it's true every week. It's good to get together and even if it is online for a few moments, just to remind ourselves about kind of what's important and just kind of refresh ourselves and hopefully reorient ourselves to God's purposes and God's ideals for our lives. And it's never a bad thing to dive into Scripture and listen to what Jesus has to tell us. And speaking of Jesus, we are in the home stretch of our series of lessons where we're looking at Jesus' words in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapters 5 through 7. And today we come to what is perhaps some of the most well-known words of Jesus, although as we'll talk about in just a second, maybe we don't know them as well as we think we do. We know what they say, but we don't necessarily take them as the face value of what Jesus is actually saying. At any rate, let's listen to what Jesus has to say in Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 7. Here's what he says. "Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces." These words of Jesus here in the first part of Matthew chapter 7, specifically verse 1, are, as I alluded to earlier, some of the most known and most quoted, and probably not coincidentally, most often misquoted words of Jesus in probably all of Scripture. And in our culture today, judging others, and that idea of judging has come to have such a broad and sweeping definition that it now includes virtually any attempt to address someone else's choices or behavior or even someone else's beliefs. But when Jesus speaks about not judging people, it's not to be taken as some unilateral ban on exercising all forms of judgment when it comes to specifically people and the things that they do. What we need to understand, though, is that Jesus is addressing the spirit behind judgment rather than simply the exercising of it. Now, to be clear, none of us are called to be judgmental. And the Bible clearly speaks about this idea of judging others for the purpose, the sole purpose of looking down on them and condemning them, that we think we're better than them and we have no heart for loving them and helping them to grow. We just want to tell them all the things that they're doing wrong. But that word judgmental also gets thrown around about every single nod someone makes in the direction of hinting that some things are right and other things are wrong. And especially with reference to the latter, we're all too often reminded that judging is wrong, right? But other than the obvious contradiction in saying that judging is wrong, which is, of course, a judgment itself, it simply makes no sense to make this unqualified statement of saying that judging is just unilaterally wrong. I mean, we make judgments every single day about a myriad of different things and even about a myriad of different people. And not making those judgments can end up leaving us with some serious repercussions and consequences. But someone might ask, but didn't Jesus tell us not to judge or we too will be judged? Well, of course he did. It's right there. We just read it. But it was hardly an unqualified statement. He certainly made judgments about behaviors and people. He called some people snakes. He called other people children of the devil. I mean, it sounds pretty judgmental to me. Jesus' statement not to judge or you too will be judged, if you read it in its context, it's in, we just read it in its context, but it's in this larger paragraph of hypocrisy and forbidding that condemning, as I mentioned others, condemning of others, and what they may be doing, just with no heart for restoring them or helping them to grow. He prohibits, poking holes in others' reputations when we've got our own character things that need to be worked on first. That's why he says, take the plank out of your own eye. But he does still say to take the plank out so that then you can be able to take the speck out of your brother's eye. But Jesus also makes this, I would add to that, Jesus also makes this statement on the matter of judging in John chapter 7, verse 24. He says, "Look beneath the surface so that you can judge correctly." Or as another translation says, don't judge by mere appearances, but judge with right judgment. So in one place he tells us not to judge, but in another place he tells us to judge, but do so with right judgment. So do they contradict each other? Well, of course not. What he's saying is the same thing, just in different words, that you and I make judgments, but the key is to make good ones and to make them with a heart for people. And in a culture that has muddied up these words of Jesus in Matthew chapter 7, it might help many of us, myself included, to get clear on this judging business. It's simply a matter of distinguishing good from evil, right from wrong, commanded from forbidden. In order to stay on one side of the line that divides the two of those things, you're going to have to make some judgments. Now, to be clear, and I've said this before, but I want to reiterate it, yes, some people are harsh and judgmental, including some Christians at times. They look for fault. They're quick to criticize. They seem to delight in another's failure. And that's not in any way, shape, or form what Jesus calls us to be or to do. On the other hand, I need people in my life who are going to hold me accountable. I need people who will help me stay true to what I say I believe. I need people who will help me to keep from getting too far off track and help point me in a better direction. And so do you. And that's not being judgmental. That's just helping each other follow Jesus better and to live the life that he's called us to live. I hope you have a blessed day. God bless.